going to lose my shoe, aren't I? See, this is the beauty of doing church in a school. You never know what they're going to throw at you. Last summer, we showed up, and it was like the Greatest Showman exploded and vomited all over the walls and the halls and everything here. So I'm thankful that we get to be here. I'm thankful that we get to come together as a church today. And this is our last installment of what we called our Fortune Cookie Wisdom, where every Sunday, at the end of the Sunday, we just took the fortune cookie, we cracked it open, and we just read out what the next fortune was going to be. But last Sunday, I didn't do that. Last Sunday, I totally took pastor privilege so that I could share with you some of the wisdom that has been imparted to me over my life. And so I sat back this week and I thought through what would I share as what would I pass on, what would I give out of my life to you to say that these are the key things that have helped me change over the course of my life. Help me change the way that I think. Help me to change the way that I work. Help me to change the way that I interact in my marriage. Help me to change, period. Because change is hard. We don't like change. In fact, we don't like change so much that the only change we actually like is the change that we come up with. If somebody else tells us that we have to change, then we really don't like it. In fact, we can think of all the negative ideas and all the negative things that can come out of it so that when we look at the change, we don't really look at it as change, we look at it as challenge. And we go, what is the new challenge that you're giving me, not necessarily the new change that I need to hold on to. I mean, change is something that happens to us all the time. I mean, the weather changes. I mean, it's going to change today. The sun's going to come out. And the morning that we were kind of complaining that it was raining and dreary and a little bit too much humidity and my hair's not going exactly the way that I want it to go, is all going to go away around 2 o'clock. Because then it's going to get hot and you're just going to go inside and you're going to hide. Because that's what we do in South Carolina. We hide when it gets too hot. Right? But fortune cookie wisdom. Wisdom that we can pass on, take hold of, and allow it to change our lives in a different way. We've been coming from this verse, Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7, which says, wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. Though it costs all you have, get understanding. And so we've been talking about this verse and letting it sit there, but what we haven't done is actually read the verse behind it. Because this is the verse behind it. Cherish her. Her in reference to wisdom. And she will exalt you. Embrace her. And she will honor you. Cherish wisdom. Don't mock it. Don't frown upon it. Don't push it away. Wisdom is there for your benefit as well as mine. It's something that allows us to do more in our lives with the more wisdom that we gain. Matter of fact, it says that wisdom will exalt you. It'll take you to the next level. It's not just knowledge that helps you get there, but it's the wisdom on how to actually to be able to use it. Embrace the wisdom. How many times have you been given some wise words in your life and you've just totally ignored them? I remember, we don't really tell this side of our story very much, but I remember in the beginning of my marriage with Leah and when I got myself in trouble. And I'd already been doing all the things I wasn't supposed to be doing, and I was trying to seek out the right advice of what should I do and how should I go. And I went to a church and knocked on the door and asked if I could speak to one of the pastors, and the guy pulled me in, and I told him everything that was happening in my life and how I was lying and cheating and not really coming out and telling everybody what was going on. And his wisdom to me was, you need to go tell your wife. I didn't think that was very wise at that time. But looking back at it, truth be told, looking back, those were the wisest words. But I had too much pride, too much arrogance, too many different things going on in my life to blind the reality of the truth, that if I could have just listened to the words and done it, how much pain and suffering could I have saved myself? How much pain and suffering can we save ourselves if we just actually take hold of some of the wisdom that people have given to us over our lives? Wisdom will create honor in you and for you. It'll create favor for you when it doesn't even make sense. So I thought today would be a good day to just kind of steal the whole thing of wisdom and just get some practical wisdom and put it out there. Anybody wants some practical? I feel like practical wisdom is good wisdom. I mean, there's some wisdom that is out there that is really like high and lofty and like really great, and those are really great words. I'll just never be able to use them in my life, right? You know, some of us have even read through the Bible and looked at some of the words in the Bible, and we're like, man, I'm so glad Jesus did that. High five you, man, because I can't pull that off, right? But practical wisdom that I feel like we could take and put it in our pockets and carry it around with us. Wisdom that I think that we could take and adapt it and put it in our marriages, put it in our jobs, put it in how we lead people, as well as how we follow them. A little bit of practical wisdom. So we're gonna take it down, and this is not all found within the book of Proverbs. This is a little bit spread out through the Bible, but this is some of the wisdom that I was imparted to. One of the first wisdom was something that my parents shared with me, and that's this: show me your friends, and I will show you your future. If you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. The reality is we become like those that we are surrounded by. And if the people that are surrounding us are there to hurt us, we will be then marked by pain. And we also will take on the identity of that. If the people that are around us are there to help us to get to the next level, help us to grow, to mature, to gain something fresh and new in this life, then we too will be able to do that. Show me your friends. I'll show you your future. If your friends are going sideways, but you're trying to go straight, the reality is that as they pull you sideways, you will eventually go that way. It might not look like it in the beginning. In the beginning, maybe it'll feel like you're the one trying to change their course. But the truth of the matter is, if the people that are around you are doing the things that aren't helping you, that are actually harming you, you might want to think about some new friends. Well, relationships is all that we have, and that's all that we need. That's true. But the beauty of this planet is that there's 4.5 billion people out there that you can choose from. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's other people won't show up over the course of your life eventually, but if the friends that you have are pulling you in one way and it's not the way that you want to go, you might want to look somewhere else. In Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, it says this: walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Now, growing up, my mom and my dad and my brother, we were a military family, so we lived in different places all over the world. And usually it was about a stint for about 3 to 4 years, and then you moved again. And you really had to learn how to make friends. If not, you were really lonely. And not only did you have to learn how to make friends, you had to learn how to be yourself all over again, every single time. Which was great if you did something really, really dumb before. Now, that means it didn't really have to follow you, and people didn't really need to know about that unless you told them about it. But the reality is that your family still knew who you were and what had happened. But the people that we got to be around were all different types. But the one person that I directly remember not being around was my grandfather. I had 2 different grandfathers. One grew up in the steel mill industry in Ohio, and one was more like a hunter and gatherer. And I kind of gravitated more towards my mom's dad in my later years of my youth. And mainly because he taught me to do stuff that I couldn't do on my own. And one of the biggest things that he taught me, and not only did he teach me, but my dad and my family taught me this as well, but hard work. You know, I love hard work. A good day where I can just sweat and accomplish and get something done. I don't know if it's just something inside of my mind, but I've shared with you this before, that I love to be able to write the thing down and cross it off. Like sometimes I really cross it off. Like, you get all that emotion and get really excited. And one time, my grandfather, I learned that I needed some extra money to go to prom. And so he called me up and was like, hey, son, I need you to come up here, spend about 2 or 3 days with me, and I'm going to help you get your money for prom. And I'm thinking, man, that's fantastic, because I've done a lot of things with my grandfather over the past. I mean, we went to graveyards and shot groundhogs out of the ground. I mean, come on, nothing creepier than going to visit grandma and this thing starts coming out of the middle of the grave, right? So we were there to protect you and the freaking all that stuff out. So he'd take me to do just a bunch of different things, and as we would go and he would teach me stuff, I always got to have some fun in the middle of it, except for the simple fact that this one time he taught me the concept of hard work in an apple orchard. And what he told me was, for every bushel you pick, I'll give you 50 cents. Well, prom was like $250, not 50 cents. And then he put a catch on the whole concept of the hard work. And you just can't go pick all the bottom fruit. You got to clear the tree. Well, I'm 6'9". You can't clear the tree from the ground, which means you had to get up in the ladder. And how you pick apples is you put a strap of a bucket around your waist, and it has this little thing on the bottom where you open it up and dump out the apples. But you can't just pick an apple. You have to pick an apple where the stem stays on it. So literally for 20 minutes, he taught me the technique of picking an apple, and then he left me. He left me in the orchard by myself to pick apples. Not just for 10 minutes. For 8 hours, he left me to pick, because he knew $250, that's what you needed. But what he really taught me was the concept of hard work pays off, and hard work really never hurt anybody. This past week, we had a neighbor who literally out of nowhere had a tree fall down in her backyard. And I was walking our puppy around the block, and as I was walking the puppy, I noticed that she's a widower. She's by herself, and so she's grabbing these branches and she's dragging them out from the back. And I'm thinking to my mom, well, she's trimming something, right? As we walk around the corner, she tells me this story, how her grandkids woke up about 6 o'clock in the morning to come and tell her that, hey, Grandma, you had a tree fall down in your backyard. And she's like, yeah, right, whatever, go to sleep. Like, no, we don't get up this early. It's the weekend. And about 6:30, they came back and woke her up again. And, hey, Grandma, you got a tree down in the back of your yard. And so finally she got up, and sure enough, she had a tree down in the back of her yard, like a real tree. I mean, not like, just the bush kind of fell over kind of a thing. And so she's telling me this, and I'm thinking, she's like, well, I got it. I've got my chainsaw, and we're going to cut it, and we're going to move it. And so I'm thinking to myself, what is it, like a 10-foot tree? Like, it can't be that bad. No. It's like a 30-foot tree. And I'm talking like, if you cut the log like this, you better have 2 people to pick it up and carry it to the curb, because it's a lot of weight. And so what I did is I volunteered myself and my 6-year-old daughter. Hard work. And so me and Kendall went over her house, and we borrowed a chainsaw from somebody in the church, and we cut up the tree. And I thought it would take like an hour. It took 2 days. Just so you know, I'm not the greatest at cutting down trees. So if you need somebody to do it, you don't want me. I'll do some grunt work. But in the middle of us moving this tree, literally cutting all these branches and trying to make it fun for my 6-year-old to carry stuff out, halfway through, she's like, Daddy, this is hard. Yes, it is, honey. But hard work never killed anybody. Because the reality is hard work is one of those small things in our lives that we need to pay attention to. Small things become big things. And if we can highlight small things in our lives and take care of small things in our lives, that's the first step in gaining some wisdom. So here's the first part of the wisdom that I'd love to give you. Pay attention to the small things. Small things turn into big things. I didn't take my daughter back there so she could sweat and get scratched up by the branches. I took my daughter back there so she could realize that she can help somebody else even at 6 years old. That she can show the love of Jesus even at 6 years old. That she can do a little bit of hard work even at 6 years old. And so therefore, it's important for us to go after the small things in life, because if we don't go after the small things in life, what happens is we will never achieve the big things. Do you know how you get up to the top of a mountain? One step at a time. One small step at a time. But see, we are people that like the instant gratification and the concept of, let me get on the cable car. And let me take that ride all the way to the top, the easiest way that we can get there, so that I can stand on top of the mountain and watch the sun rises and the sun sets. But this life isn't guaranteed to be easy. And the paths that we have set out before us are going to require some work of us. And if we don't pay attention to the small things, we're going to lose the big idea of what the big things are. In Luke chapter 16, verse 10, Jesus talks about being trustworthy and how to take care of these things that are considered small. He says this, whoever can be trusted with the very little can also be trusted with very much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with very much. But right now, Jesus is talking about money, but this doesn't just apply to money. This applies to relationships. This applies to friendships. This applies to work ethic. This applies to what you currently feel the weight of in your life. That if we can truly be trusted to go into this world, to make a difference in this world, God's going to load more on you. And the more that he loads on you, the more ability you have to bring glory to him. But the things that we are in control of, the things that you have control of, if we're dishonest with them, if we put them to the side, why would God ever want to bring those things out again? Mother Teresa once said this, be faithful in the small things, because it is in them that your strength lies. But catch this. You can manipulate this to say a lot of different things. Be faithful in the small things, because it is in them that your relationships will live or die. Be faithful in the small things, because in them you can finish it. Your work will grow, your business will grow, your joy will be complete, your life can become happier. Small things create big things in the end. In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus taught this principle. There's a steward there, a man that owns a lot of property, and he passes out 1 talent to 3 different servants. And the Bible tells us that the first servant took the 1 talent, went out into the world, and made it and multiplied it to 10. The second went into the world and created 5. And the last one went into the world and hid it. He hid the talent. And his explanation for hiding the talent is the fact that this business owner, this manager, this person that he reports to is a shrewd man, and he's a businessman, and he would be very upset if he lost the talent. Unfortunately, this man that gave him the talent showed up again and said, show me what you did with my money. The first one gave him back the 10, and the steward said, this is amazing. How did you do this? This is perfect and great. How did you take this 1 talent and multiply it to 10? Because you've been faithful with little, I will then bless you with much. The second one comes in, shows him that he turned his 1 into 5. He repeats the saying and gives him more than what he had. And the last one shows up and says, well, here's the 1 that you gave me. And the Bible says that the manager, this man, got irate. How could you only give me my 1 back? And the man said, well, it's because you're a shrewd manager. You're cruel. You're mean. And if I lost your money, I didn't want to feel that wrath. So I just wanted to make sure I got your money and gave it back to you. And the manager said, so you know me so well that I risked giving you the money so that you could risk to go make more. But you decided to just hide it. And so for some of us, we make that decision daily. We decide to hide what God has put inside of us. We rather look at other people and see the talents that they have and the abilities that they're doing and the promotion and the raise that they got. And we would rather look at all these things and point to everybody else's talents, but we prefer just to take ours and hide it and keep it to ourselves. God did not create you to take things and hide. God created you to make a difference in this world. And you've got things inside of you, and you've got abilities to do things that other people can't. And if all we're doing is taking what God has already given us and taking it and hiding it and keeping it for ourselves, what we're truly doing is telling God that the gift that he's given to us isn't good enough. It's not good enough for us. It's not good enough to share. And it's most definitely not good enough to risk. The more we invest in the small things in life, the more things will come out of it. The more things we'll be able to do in our lives. The better relationships we'll have. The better work environments we'll have. The better people will follow us. The better people will trust us. So here's some of the wisdom reward in the small things. That people will empower you and invest in you when you take care of the small things. When you take care of the small things, doors will open that maybe you would never have dreamed of or thought of. When my family first moved here to Mount Pleasant, one of the things we didn't realize was the cost of living. We thought that we would make this transition over and it would be just fine and we would be okay. But we got to the point where we realized that the money that was coming in that we had raised and then also the cost of living here was basically equal. And if we wanted to have a present at Christmas, we better do something different. So I called a couple people that I knew and tried to get into possibly getting a part-time job or something. And so for some of you guys, you know that I work for Boardwalk as the lead pastor, but I also work for an organization called Carolina Lanterns. But I started at Carolina Lanterns delivering boxes, sweeping floors, taking out trash, changing light bulbs so all the 6'9" changing light bulb jokes could come to fruition in my life. I started in a place where it was just part-time and just there. And I remember one of my first weeks at the job that somebody had bought a fixture and they got it off the floor and they asked me to go take it down and wrap it up so that they could take it with them. And I was working with another guy there, and as I was packaging up the light, I was making sure that everything was taken care of. I took the light bulbs out of the fixture. I put extra bubble wrap around it. I took it and packaged it in such a way that it wouldn't, if it fell, it would be okay. I put it in a box and got it ready to go and walk out the front door. And as I was doing all this guy looks at me and goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm packaging up the light. This is what I was asked to do." He's like, "Do you wrap your Christmas presents that well?" No, actually, I'm horrible at wrapping Christmas presents. The angles of how I wrap and fold it doesn't really make sense. I'm that kind of guy that I'd just rather wrap it, put 2 clamps on the end, and cut the scissors to make it look like a big firecracker handing it to you. Because that's about as good and creative as I can get, because I know that the other stuff just really doesn't work for me. I slap a bow on a present because that's where I accidentally rip the spot, right? I mean, because that's how that works, right? That's how it looks for me, you know? But I took pride in the moment of just making sure that this person was going to get their fixture home safely without it breaking. Because I believe that being average is never good enough. And I believe that if we're faithful in the small things, bigger things can occur. And eventually, over the last year, my part-time job has turned into a full-time job. Not because I ever wanted it, not because I sought after it, but because if you're faithful in the small things, God will bring the bigger things. And can we be faithful in the small things in our lives so that God can bring the bigger things, and he will allow people to empower you and invest in you. And now I went from sweeping floors to now being a VP of a company, which doesn't even make sense to me, because that's not what the plan was. The plan was to be here, to do this. And you know what? The economy's funky. And so right now we ride a wave of being blessed to be able to do both of these things. And being very thankful that God opened a door when we didn't expect it. But to take care of the small things so that bigger things can happen in our lives. Let me summarize this real quick by saying this. Becoming conscientious in the small things prepares you to excel in the big things in life. Becoming conscientious, being aware. Let me tell you something. People live in details. If we ignore details, we ignore people. I am not detail-oriented. It's the truth. My beautiful wife, she is. I am not. So Lee is the one that helps me pay attention to the details. She's the one that helps me slow down because I float in the cloud and dream, and I'm like, hey, tomorrow we can have Christmas in July, and we could bring in snow cone makers, and kids could slide down slides, and July's tomorrow? Yeah, that's me. That's how I do this, right? My wife is the one that helps me pay attention to the details and pay attention of life and reminds me of birthdays and anniversaries and things like that because, honestly, I get lost in those things. But when I can slow down and pay attention to the small things, we can honor people. We can take care of those that are around us, and ultimately, God will honor that inside of you. Here's the second part of the wisdom that I'd like to give. Go the second mile. When I was growing up and playing basketball, I had a coach one time and tell me that I needed to always go the second mile. To him, it was literally, because he saw something inside of me that he thought needed to truly come out of me. And I was an average basketball player that could be good at times and just could be average at other times. And so one day after practice, I remember it was at the end of my junior year, he told me that if I wanted to become somebody in the field of basketball, in the realm of basketball, that I needed to go the second mile. In my mind, I knew what he meant. I needed to push a little harder, but what he meant was I needed to literally go the second mile, because at the end of practice, we would run a mile. And he was like, no, you need to go the second mile, right? Because I didn't finish first in the first mile, and I didn't finish last in the first mile. I kind of finished in the middle of the pack, and he looked at me and said, if I wanted to become better, I had to go the second mile. I had to push through the agony and through the pain, through the sweat, through the dehydration. I had to go a little bit more than everybody else on my team. But not everybody else on my team, everybody else in my county. And not everybody else in my county, but everybody else in the state. And not everybody else in the state, but everybody else in the nation. I had to go the second mile. I had to push through it. So then all my friends were stopping at the end of the first mile, getting a drink of water. There I went. And literally had to get the second mile in. But see, my coach isn't the only one that taught me about the second mile. See, Jesus did too. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 41, it says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. In other words, we have to fight against being average. We have to fight against the average, the concept of average in our workplace, the concept of average in our marriage, the concept of average in this society. We have to fight against being average. Roger Staubach, quarterback from the Dallas Cowboys, once said this: there are no traffic jams along the extra mile, because there are not a lot of people there. A good friend of mine that I got to spend some time with in Georgia, he's a campus pastor there. He is part of helping train other people that want to be in ministry, a bunch of interns that go to this church to learn how to do ministry in just like a little bit of a different way. And I got to sit in one of the classes that he was sharing and talking, and he shares how he got to become an executive at a very young age in a company in Chicago. And the thing that he said is, I didn't work more than 40 hours. I didn't work less. I just worked when nobody else did. In other words, he worked on the day that nobody else wanted to work. Do you know what day that is? Friday. Because on Friday, about 10 o'clock, we're done. We got plans for the weekend. We're thinking about who's babysitting our kids, where we're going to go eat that night, what plans are happening for the weekend. And honestly, we're setting up Friday so that when we come back in on Monday, then we can work then. But he said he sat in an office and he watched what happened on Friday and how half the office would cash out around lunchtime and go eat lunch together, then go play golf. And then they would just put it on the corporate credit card as they were trying to do some sales or something. And he watched how people just literally put their feet up and kick back and didn't work the Friday. And so he said, I just made a decision that I wasn't going to be average, that I was going to work the hours that was required of me the entire time. And so he began to work Fridays. And God blessed that. He blessed the idea of him going literally the second mile. And God desires for us to go to the second mile in our workplace, in our marriage, at school. It doesn't matter where it is. God desires for us to go that second mile, do that extra effort in our lives, because he's called us to a higher standard than what the world is. That Jesus has called us to be salt and light in this world. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 14, it says this: you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can you be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Go the extra mile. There's a beautiful story about this in the Bible. It's early on in Genesis when Abraham sends out his servant to go find a wife for his son Isaac. His servant goes out and starts to travel throughout the desert and throughout the land to try to find who's going to be a good suitor for his master's boy. And he comes up to a watering hole, and when he gets to the watering hole, he notices in a distance that there's these ladies, these maidens that are coming in to fill up their jugs of water to be able to take it back to the place where they live. And the boy kind of throws up this Hail Mary of a prayer and says basically, hey, God, if any of these women are supposed to be the women that are for my master's son Isaac, let them be the one that when I ask them for a drink, they not only give me a drink of water, but they give my camels a drink of water as well. And so this lady named Rebecca shows up to the watering hole, and the servant goes over to her and says, excuse me, ma'am, may I have a drink of water? And she says, sure. Gives him a drink of water, but after she gives him the drink of water, she pauses and says, you know what? Let me help you by giving your camels something to drink as well. So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but do you know how many gallons of water a thirsty camel can drink? Up to 50 gallons of water. And he didn't just have 1 gallon. He didn't have 1 camel. He had 10 camels. That's 500 gallons of water. Now, I'm not that strong to carry a 500-gallon bucket of water, and so I'm going to guess that Rebecca wasn't either. She probably would have carried some type of cylinder container that could have hold about 5 to maybe 10 gallons of water. And she would have carried that to the spring, filled it up, and taken it home for her family to use for that day. But today she decided that she was going to help a stranger, someone she had no clue who they were. And the Bible tells us that it wasn't just a well that you just put a bucket on and you kind of cranked it down like we see in pictures. But it was a well where she would have had to walk down to descend down to the well, to fill up her jar, to then carry it back out. So let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that the jar was 10 gallons. She would have had to make 50 trips down to the well to fill up the water, to pour it in a trough, so that an animal that she did not own or care for could get a drink. Talk about going the extra mile. Talk about allowing the love of God to shine out of you without any requirement of anything back. If we go the second mile, what will truly happen is that we will never lack for greater opportunities in our lives. I truly believe that the things that have happened over the course of my life, and the promotions that have come in the workplace, or the favor with neighbors, or the things that have happened are not just luck. It's because God allows us to go the extra mile to show the love of Jesus in everything we do, in all that we say, in all that we have, in all that we portray. And as we do that, we're able to step from this first mile into the second to give the glory to God. And Rebecca did that without any catch. Here's the third piece of wisdom I'd like to give you today. With everything you have, with everything you do, with all of who you are, be honorable. Be honorable. And the number one way to do that is that we have to honor God first and foremost. But how do we honor God? Well, we honor God through positioning. We position our lives underneath Him. We position our marriage, our children, our work relationships, our finances, our time, our energy. We position it all underneath God. When I was a banker, I could tell you what you loved and what you hated depending on what your checkbook wrote. I can tell you what you love and what you hate depending on where your time is spent. And if we're able to position ourselves correctly underneath God, what we will truly do is we will see God begin to honor us. It says this in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 30. Those who honor me, God, I will honor. But those who despise me will be disdained. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be on the sub list of that one. I want to be on the honor part. The fact that as I position my life and I pour out honor for God, God will then turn around and pour honor onto me. And one of the key areas for us to do this is how we honor others, how we treat others, how we speak about others, how we handle things that others give you. It is extremely important that we honor those that are around us, first by showing them who God is, and then by trying to live it out to the best of our abilities. And God is not someone that we package up and put in a box and make Him and force Him to be there. If your God is that way, then your God is too small. But as we try to press in, and as we try to bring others with us, and as we try to position our lives underneath Him as the kingship and honor Him with our entire lives, what we can truly do is we can honor the finish line of this life. in 1968 in the Olympic Games in Mexico City. The marathon run was one of the last things that they decided to do one of the days. And as they started the marathon out, everybody was neck and neck, and they were running hard, and they were running to the finish line to try to get there. But about an hour into the race, there was a mob of people, a mob of runners that ran into each other and basically trampled another runner. The reporters say that he got thrown to the ground violently and that his knee was messed up and that his foot got hurt and that the medical attention team came to his side to try to help him and take care of him. Well, as you can imagine, the race still went on. And as the runners began to finish crossing the finish line, the stands started to empty and the fans went home. And 2 hours later, the runner that got trampled entered the stadium. And as he limped in, and as he finished the marathon run, and finally crossed the finish line, the reporters and the umpires questioned him. Why didn't you stop? I mean, you're hurt. You're bleeding. I mean, we had EMS and health right there just to bandage you up and take you. You had every right to stop the race. And this guy named Stephen said, "My people did not send me to the Olympic Games to start the race, but to finish it. God did not give you breath in your bones to start the race, but to finish it. And as long as you have breath inside of you, your race is not over. There are still people that need to hear the good news of Jesus Christ come from you. There are still people in this world that are beat up and bruised, but their race isn't over. And they're looking for someone to run alongside with. And God has called us to run this race till the end, to honor the finish line, to press in, to reap what you sow. If you sow honor in this life, you will reap honor. It says in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 21 and 22, "My son, do not let wisdom and understanding out of your sight. Preserve sound judgment, and they will be life for you, an ornament of grace around your neck." Will you pray with me? Father, I thank you for this day. God, I thank you for the opportunity that we get to come and to hear more about wisdom in this life, to be able to take it from this everyday thing, to be able to apply it to our lives as a whole. So, Father, I pray in the name of Jesus that you will help us to take some of this practical wisdom and apply it to our daily lives. Father, help us to honor you